You are walking through the wastelands as you hear a distress signal. You decide to walk towards it, wondering what you could possibly walk into. After cautiously walking towards where the distress signal was coming from, you find a strange sight. You run into something that looks as though it could not be from this world. You wonder if you could be dreaming. There is no way you could actually be seeing an alien ship. As you get closer, you start to see a strange blue light. Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Fiction. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the Mothership Zeta DLC from Fallout 3. Yes, this is the aliens. More specifically, we are going to discuss the characters you find on the ship and what the aliens could potentially want with them. To begin, we are going to discuss the experiments. The aliens on board Mothership Zeta have several experiments going on. We can see this from the variety of people, cryo-frozen, and also in the dissecting rooms. But what exactly are they doing with them? This was no dinner party prep for Hannibal Lecter. No. Instead, if we look at the alien captive log 19, this gives us some clues as to what is going on aboard the Zetan ship. Part of this captive log mentions the aliens turning the human prisoners into what he claims to be abominations. These we can find through some investigating of the ship, and well, abominations are a good way to describe them. These creatures are the worst kind of combination between humans and Zetans. The abominations have a greenish tinge to their skin with pinkish parts, abnormally long arms, red-looking veins covering their skin, and what could be their intestines prominently sticking out in their stomach. Pairing all this with their strange posture, these creatures aren't placing first in any Miss Universe competitions. These would not be the only experiment that littered the labs of the Mothership Zeta. No, there would also be vivisections. A vivisection is a live dissection. We know this based on two alien captive logs, Captive Log 14 and Captive Log 20. Starting with Captive Log 14. This is a conversation between two unnamed abductees on the mothership. Quoting one of them, "You saw that guy. He was all cut open like he'd been butchered." And with Captive Log 20, "Oh man, why can't I feel my arms? Wait, are those my arms? What did you do? Put them back. Put them back on." So these aliens had a hobby for dissection, most likely wanting to better understand the human bodies that they were trying to merge with their own, to create a more functional and, dare I say, a mildly better looking version of the hybrid. A fun little side note on the alien research. They also happen to have research into human technology, more specifically, the Giddy Up Buttercup toy. These children toys happen to be an obsession of the aliens on Mothership Zeta. One of these Giddy Up Buttercups on the ship can conveniently be found all by itself in the research labs, away from the other metallic ponies. But it is surrounded by several dead bodies, because of course everyone wants a children's toy with a murderous past. But anyway, moving on. Now that we have gone through the experiments on board Mothership Zeta, we should discuss the important characters. So a medic, a samurai, and a cowboy walk into a UFO. What happens next? Since we have these three, we might as well start by discussing the medic, also known as Elliot Terkorian. Elliot is one of the more recent abductees along with his squad from the Battle for Anchorage. Now, he was not always a medic in the army. In fact, he has an interesting backstory. Before enlisting to fight the good fight in the Great War, he was actually a doctor, with qualifications in cryoscience. That is why he is able to mess around with the cryogenic freezers he sees the other soldiers in. Elliot would move on from his regular job and enlist around the year 2076, which would take him to the front lines over at the Battle for Anchorage. Right before the final battle for Anchorage, he and the other army medics in his team were abducted. This makes him one of the more recent additions along with Sally and Soma. Moving on from the medic, we should discuss the samurai. This is Toshiro Kago. He also happens to be the oldest of the members of those taken by the Zetans, even when compared with the alien captive logs. As Toshiro Kago, based on his appearance, is likely to be from feudal Japan, most likely in the late 1560s to the early 1600s, as this is what his armor appears to date to, looking similar to others from around the Azuchi Momoyama time period. Toshiro is not known for his way with words, but there are translations of his speech. Much of what he asks is actually requesting his sword, which can be returned to him. With this, he can help you get rid of the aliens, as he's quite skilled with a sword. And now, the cowboy, who we know as Paulson. He is from the Wild West, so we are guessing he was abducted between 1865 to 1895, making him the second oldest character you interact with. However, based on the captive logs, there are characters who would have been abducted between Toshiro and Paulson. Paulson is, out of all those you work with in this DLC, the most aggressive towards other characters and the aliens. And when it comes to the aliens, he has several interesting names for them, apart from aliens and little green men. This is in part due to his desire for revenge against the aliens, as he, before he was frozen, watched as the aliens took his wife and son. Paulson does not believe in teamwork, believing that it is more like sending cattle to slaughter than actually achieving a goal. Because of this and his desire for revenge, he's the kind to pick his battles, only going into places he believes he is able to provide some help in. Moving away from Paulson and onto Sally, another character with a tragic tale on the alien Mothership. She is the only child you run into on the ship. However, she did not come alone. She was brought with her sister. Sally is one of the newer members of Mothership Zeta, being picked up just after the bombs dropped back in 2077 during the Great War, meaning she has been on the Mothership roaming around for 200 years. The majority of this time, she has been by herself, which is actually quite impressive. But what actually happened to Sally's family? Well, starting with Sally's parents, they never actually made it on board the Mothership. They died not long after the Great War, leaving the two girls as orphans. Sally and her sister would sadly be separated on board Mothership Zeta, and the aliens would experiment on them separately. Sally, being better at escaping, managed to avoid many of these experiments. And her sister, well, she would sadly pass away from one of the aliens' experiments. Sally, however, was not the newest member of the alien abductees. Apart from the Lone Wanderer, that would actually be Soma. Soma, the other member of the cell when you wake up, is another post-war wastelander, being from the year 2277, making the time between the Lone Wanderer's abduction and her abduction quite short. Although she is rather kind, helpful, and resourceful on board the Mothership, she is rather quiet about her background. But with some digging deeper, she is actually a slaver who works with those out at Paradise Falls. This is the slaver colony in Fallout 3. If you want me to go in more depth about that, let me know in the comments. Her run-in with the aliens comes from her picking up the distress signal coming from the recon aircraft Theta that had been downed over near Fort Bannister. This is also the ship you find and how you enter Mothership Zeta. She had planned to salvage the scrap of whatever she had found there, but instead, due to ET's phoning home, she was picked up instead. These characters would not be the only characters that you would meet, however, they would be the only living humans. There is also the deceased astronaut by the name of Colonel Hartigan. Now, Hartigan was one of the players in the space race. He was on the Clarabella 7, which never made its way back to Earth. You can actually find the Clarabella 7 on the ship. As a way of explaining the tragedy, the US government claimed that the Clarabella 7 got tangled in some high-altitude weather balloons and crash-landed. This was back in the 1960s, in the middle of the space race. It ultimately led to much wild speculation about aliens causing his disappearance, and government cover-ups through conspiracy theorists like those belonging to the group Quare Verum, the name translating from Latin to seek the truth. Little on the nose. Who, of course, claimed that Colonel Hartigan was taken by aliens. But who would believe that? So Hartigan, who you will find on the ship along with the others in cryofreeze, but how come, unlike others, he did not survive the thawing? This was due to the extreme stress from the alien encounter. In the Alien Captive Record Log 8, which happens to be Colonel Hartigan's log, he attempts to make friendly contact and was rather excited with meeting aliens for the first time. However, the feelings were not reciprocated, considering they electrocuted him and with his last words being, "Ow, what the hell? What is this? What are you doing?" It is likely they were not exactly polite or gentle with him either, which is what likely led to him dying, the shock and stress of it all. Interestingly enough, Colonel Hartigan would not be the only speculated government interaction between humans and aliens. There is also the suggestion that some of the more interesting weapons and robots that the Enclave have at their disposal are actually influenced by alien weaponry. This can actually be seen in another of the DLCs, Broken Steel, more specifically at the Adams Air Force Base. But anyway, back to Mothership Zeta. Now that we know about the experiments on board Mothership Zeta and some of the characters you encounter, what might the aliens want with us? Well, based on the abominations that you encounter as part of your walkthrough of Mothership Zeta, it hints that the aliens may be either unable to reproduce through the normal means. This could be due to disease or evolution of their species. So the dissections we see of the others like Elliot Turkorian's battalion or the various other bodies we see throughout the ship indicates that they need a better understanding of the human body to get their experiments to work. As with encountering the abominations, they are not friendly, not only to you, but also to their creators, kind of like a less intelligent Frankenstein's monster situation. Also going along with Elliot's comments, the consideration that aliens may be looking to take over a new planet. Maybe with their advanced technology, they destroyed their own, and as Elliot says, when asked about what the aliens want with humans, isn't it obvious? They're probably using us as guinea pigs, examining our anatomy. Once they've figured out how to make exact copies of us, they'll send those back to Earth to take our places. When they've copied enough of us, they'll turn on us and take over the world. Come on, how can you not see that coming? Maybe they're going to take over the whole planet. I do love a body snatchers reference. There are several films and episodes of TV shows that feature body snatchers, but the premise is these aliens are replicating humans and replacing them in an attempt to overthrow human civilization. In some movies, it features strange seeds growing humans. In others, it's a cloning type process. With Elliot's references, he is discussing the 1956 film that has the people copied by these seed pods. However, considering how far they are from it, and that they also have not tried to work out human speech, how to understand it, and how to replicate it, so far this is unlikely. But it does make me think of the Institute and their synths. Having so many people from such a wide array of times does make this unlikely. Considering Toshiro does come from feudal Japan, there is also someone from Salem Village, 1697, which happens to be 5 years after the Salem witch trials. This is heard in Captive Log 1. With all of these captives from both far in the past and in the post-war wastelands, also invalidates the concerns of Elliot. As with the replacing of everyone with these so-called body snatchers would require the aliens to have the ability to jump forward and backwards in time to be able to replace people. Having the abomination body snatchers in such diverse times would not provide them the power to overthrow the planet and take over, as there would need to be much more spread out force throughout world governments at the same time, almost like an alien espionage operation causing governments to crumble and fall, again all together. Otherwise, if it were at separate times, other governments would just take over, making their work useless. So for the body snatcher theory to work, everyone would need to be from the same time and from positions of power, like presidents or other high-level officials and throughout all countries. If we look at the people they've taken, none of them are from positions of power. Yes, samurais are higher up, and yes, Elliot being a medic, he could be considered higher up in society, but they are no presidents, they are no kings. You won't see any of these people running the UN or any form of country. So this makes this theory unlikely. Instead, it is more likely that the aliens are a dying species looking for a way to fuse their race with the humans, making them less vulnerable to various issues, as humans do have a surprising ability to bounce back. Many animals die from broken bones, whereas humans have the ability to move past it. So this may be the cause for the researching the anatomy and the live dissections. How far can you push a human body before it dies? Considering they can't read any human language, they would not be able to pick up any medical textbook and read about it, so they would have to find out for themselves. With these experiments, the point is to make the abominations less of, well, an abomination, to make them more of a seamless blend between humans and aliens. This would allow them to create more of their likely dying race, as with this being the Mothership, we see no young aliens, nothing that resembles toys or anything that would suggest they were capable of continuing their species. It is likely that throughout the centuries of kidnapping humans, they have been trying to find a way to fix their declining species. With this, considering that they chose Earth and humans, there is a small possibility that they were hoping to come to Earth and use that as their new home. However, not as body snatchers, but potentially as a replacement for humans, considering they were rather hostile and not friendly. So let me know in the comments, what do you think the aliens are doing? If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about factions who had access to alien weapons, then you should check out my video on the Enclave in Fallout 3. It goes through their plans and whether or not they are as evil as you think.